Here on the top part, you have the wave function without strain for the balanced ground state. You can see that it's quite S-like, it's in the middle of the dots. You have to consider this is a 2D model, and we are talking about a conical one. Here you can see the effect of the strain on the wave function, and you can see that the strain basically pushed off from the center of the dot in the corner. Basically, we have a sort of toroidal. In 3D, we can think about the toroidal shape of this wave function. So this drastically reduces the overlap between the conduction ground state, which is about almost S-like, and this state here. And so because of this decreasing of the overlap, this has a strong effect on the dipole moment, as you can see in this slide here. Here you have the dipole moment for the four models with the conduction balanced band ground state interval dipole moment mu1, and in the function of the height, so basically of the volume of the dot. Now you can see on the top part of this plot, we have the two models without strain. And you can see 8 band and 1 band without strain. And you can see that there is a monotonic increasing load of this dipole moment, and then it will eventually reach the plateau value of the bulk material. Then, in the bottom part of the figure, you have the two models with the strain. And then you can see that we have a maximum, and then we have a decreasing slope, and this is absolutely given by the decreasing overlap of the wave function. And it is also possible to notice in the following slide when we have the 5 strongest dipole moments, not only mu1 again, but also this that you can see here. So in the bottom part we have the energy difference between the two confined states which are involved in this transition. Here it's not possible to see, but because of this different aspect of the strain of the different components, we also have some energy crossing of the state, which here is hard to see. And then as you can see that for almost all the dipole moments, mu1 is again here, but also for the other we have this kind of decreasing behavior, decreasing slope for the dipole, with some exception, as you can see here in mu1, which is it increases at least in this range, and this is probably given by a different composition in terms of wave function, so an increasing overlap in this case. And to show you the impact of using an 8-band model, so to use a much more realistic model, I would like to show you some results, in one slide, which is not directly a result of mine, but which is a result which has been calculated using some of my results. And basically this is an EIT application. So basically, as I told you before, EIT is concerning the slowdown of light. So here what we have is the slowdown factor as a function of the frequency. And here this is given by the ratio of the speed of light in vacuum and the group velocity to the slow light medium. But we can write it as in this way here, where m is obviously the refractive index of the material, and this is given by the real part of this quantity here, where epsilon b is the vacuum permittivity, and chi is the susceptibility of the material. But the susceptibility of the material is given by this relationship here, where we have the vacuum permittivity, the amplitude of the profile, and finally we have this P here, which is the polarization of the material, which is given by this expression here. And you can see where my result comes in, because this is given by this expression, where the thickness of the active region, the density matrix, the two-dimensional density of the quantum dot, and finally we have here the dipole moment. So basically we have a sum on all the possible dipole moments inside of the structure. And here I can show you the difference using different models. Here, this is an EIT absorption spectrum, basically the imaginary part of the susceptibility. And here you have the spectrum using the one-band model with and without strain, which are usually the model which are using this kind of computation. And here you can see the difference in using a more complex, more realistic model as 8-band with strain. You can see how different they are, both from quantitative and quantitative point of view. Here this is another peak for a different transition. That's the result of this other part here. And these are results given by people who have collaborated in DTU, and then they use my results to get this EIT spectrum here. So basically this is the end of the presentation. So we have seen a lot of things. I will try to summarize. So we started with introducing the consumer electronic model for simple cylindrical gallium nitride, aluminum nitride, Burzai quantum dots. We started with the two-dimensional rotational invariant model, the cylindrical coordinate. And then we saw that for this model, both these aspects, like lattice mismatch, spontaneous polarization, and phase laser effect, influence the strength distribution. So in other words, we saw that there are some difference between the fully and the semi-coupled model. Then I show you a comparison between the two-dimensional model and three-dimensional model, and we saw that there is both qualitative and quantitative agreement. And also we saw that the electric field as expected is cylindrical symmetric. Then we look at something more complex and realistic. We look at an hexagonal pyramid, gallium nitride and aluminum nitride quantum dots. I show you a comparison between the two previous models, the fully coupled and the semi-coupled, with this atomistic valence force field model. And I show you the impact of this electromechanical field on the spread structure, especially basically on the ground state for the conduction band. And we saw that we have a generally qualitative agreement between the three models, that the routes are quite different, especially for the electric part, and there is in this case a less significant difference between the semi and the fully coupled continuum models. Then we looked at another structure, the zinc blended indium arsenide, gallium arsenide quantum dots. I started to present the two-dimensional comparison between the two-dimensional model using the isotropic assumption with the three-dimensional anisotropic case, and then we saw that there are comparable results with an adequate choice of the parameters, and we saw that there is a weak anisotropic electric field. And finally, we looked at an analysis of the optical properties of a conical strain indium arsenide, gallium arsenide quantum dot using the basically X-band model in comparison with one-band model. Here we saw a lot of things. We saw that the strain field reduced the optical transition as a function of the void because of the decreasing overlap of the involved Y function. There is this combined influence on the different components. We did also some state crossing, if we will be looking in particular. And basically we have a separation of the head wall and light wall component in the X-band, and this gives this qualitative agreement of the lower conduction uppermost valence band. And so we have this qualitative and quantitative agreement of the dipole moment. And finally we saw that this could have a strong impact in some application like CFT because of some of these quantitative discrepancies that we have. Finally, basically just a few seconds to tell you what I'm working on now, since my project is keeping on as a postdoctoral position, I hope from tomorrow. And basically how so basically I'm working on the inclusion Coulombic correction excitons. I'm also working on some more realistic structure for zinc blended quantum dot as truncated pyramid. I'm working on gradient concentration analysis to look at the impact on strain of a structure, both using atomistic and continuum model. And actually I'm developing a new algorithm, which actually is an idea of mine, which is a combination of VFS and Monte Carlo for the analysis of optimized configuration at different gradient concentration with a comparison with the experimental results. So basically this is the end. And I should thank a lot of people for these 3 years here for my PhD, but basically I want to thank some person in particular. I want really to thank my supervisor, Mr. Barettin, for everything. Basically, I feel honored, and I will always be honored for having worked with you. I want to thank Soren Matte for having introduced me in the wonderful world of atomistic calculation. And I want also to thank our collaborator in DTU for all this work with EIT, so Jakob Homer, Torben Nielsen, Jesper Molke, and Peter Graham. And I want to finally mention that my PhD project has been supported by the Danish Research Council for Technology and Production as a part of the Quest project. Thank you for your attention. That's it. Yeah.
Daniele, for a very concise and I think convincing talk. Are there some questions from the public? Yes, not at the moment.
You can eat that.
So I give the word now to the Defense Committee. I don't know how you organize the
We have two customary comments on the first problem, so we will start. Should we take a break first? Maybe, yeah, the question is whether we should perhaps take